about to be born, the Jewish people had spent a long time in exile. They were home now physically back in the land of their ancestors, but it wasn't really home. Under Roman occupation, it was missing some of the key qualities of home: justice, freedom, security, safety. Some of those characteristics of peace. Home, I think, at least in the most idyllic sense, is where you feel safe and secure, and where you can truly rest. It's where you can let down your guard because you know you are loved, and you trust that you will be treated fairly. Home happens where, even for just a moment, we enter that childhood experience of being fully present in the now, in this moment, because we feel totally and utterly cared for, and we aren't weighed down by worries or anxiety. Now, that may not characterize the home you were raised in. It may not characterize the home you live in now. But something in us longs for that place, has always longed for that place. Home. I'll be home for Christmas, just you wait and see. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. I talked a bit in my sermon last week about Ferguson, and I wasn't going to talk about it again this week. But then the decision came in from the grand jury in the Eric Gardner case, the case of the black man who was killed by a chokehold of a police officer on Staten Island. Social media was an absolute flurry this week, with people voicing their outrage. You see, people, particularly white people, are waking up to what black people have known their whole lives. That for some in this country, there is no justice. And that where there is no justice, there is no peace. And where there is no peace, there is no home. White people are finally starting to do what we have needed to do for a long time. Shut up and listen. Listen to those stories. And this week I listened to the story of an African-American man who shared his memories of being lectured by his father about receipts. That's right, receipts, those paper things you get from the store that document your purchase. My parents never gave me a lecture about receipts. I hardly ever take them unless I know that I might need to return what I'm buying. And if I do end up taking them, I end up crumpling them and throwing them away or stuffing them in a pocket that gets washed in the washer. I hurry about my day and I don't even give a second thought to receipts. This man, however, was taught that you always take your receipt. And you keep it within quick, easy access, and you never hurry out of the store, no matter how much of a rush you are in. Black parents have this conversation and so many others with their children every day. When I think back to the conversations my parents had with me about me staying safe and secure and not getting in trouble with the law, it was when I was traveling abroad and they wanted to make sure I knew all the customs and ways of another country. What I heard this week was white people waking up, some for the first time, to the fact that black parents had this conversation with their children about life here in their own country. That's not home. When you have to tell your kids that they matter less, that they're protected less, that they need to be on their guard all the time. I'll be home for Christmas, just you wait and see. I'll be home for Many people sharing this week were shocked and in disbelief. The only person who was arrested in the Eric Garner case was the man who shot a video of his death. A video that captured Eric Garner's last words. Words that said, "Every time you see me, you want to mess with me. I'm tired of it. It stops today. I'm minding my business, officer. I'm minding my business. Please just leave me alone. I told you last time, please just leave me alone. Please don't touch me. Don't touch me. I can't breathe. I can't breathe." And it got more and more hard. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. There was not enough evidence to indict. What I heard from people this week in reaction was fear and disillusionment. The kind of fear that comes when you suddenly realize that you're not home, that you are actually living in exile, that this is not a place of safety and protection. This is not a place of liberty and justice for all. This is not a place of peace. Of course, there are many in our country who have known this for a long time. I'll be home for Christmas. Just you wait and see. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. Black Americans are not the only ones in our country who experience exile. It's any minority. It's the transgender woman who doesn't go out in public wearing a dress for fear that they'll end up like the 3 women murdered in LA this year, one just this last week, or the several murdered right here in Florida. It's the immigrants who hide away behind closed doors to speak the tongue of their hearts. It's the refugees who go from being doctors in their country to janitors in ours. It's the poor family who becomes homeless because they parked in the wrong spot, because they couldn't pay the fees to recover their car from the towing company, because the storage fees at the towing company mounted faster than their income, because they couldn't get from point A to point B fast enough. And when they did, they showed up sweaty or drenched from rain. And they lost jobs, and then they lost their apartment. This is not home. Not for many. For many, this is not a place of peace and security. For many, home feels so far away that the only way they will get to it this Christmas is in their dreams. Or perhaps if they lock the doors and pretend for a day that all is right in the world. I'll be home for Christmas, just you wait and see. I'll be home for Christmas, only in my dreams. Isaiah, the prophet, voiced a dream for his people. It was a dream of God comforting a people living in exile. It was the dream of a voice crying out in the wilderness, "Prepare the way of the Lord. Prepare a pathway for the God of peace to enter in." And he had this wonderful cosmic imagery of mountains bowing down and valleys rising up. It's really quite beautiful if you think about it. To imagine mighty mountains like Everest or Kilimanjaro bowing down. I'm not really sure what it would look like. It sounds like some wonderful royal dance. Or deep valleys and gorges like the Grand Canyon rising like men used to do when women would enter or exit a room. It's all very majestic, really. This week I tried to think about it a little differently, though. Who are those people who live in the high places, the mountains of our society, who tower over everyone else? Who are the people who live in the low, entrapping places of our society? What would it look like if we saw the Wall Street billionaire kowtow, forehead to the ground, while the homeless man who usually sits crouched small in the corner of the sidewalk stood and filled the space left by that Wall Street business person? What would it look like for the Ferguson police officer to kneel, hands behind their head, while the peaceful protesters, usually corralled and exposed to gases because there's no longer any gas masks in Ferguson, they're all sold out? What would it look like if they stood up tall and danced through the streets? What would it look like for white men and women to bow their words and listen to the black men and women's voices rising to claim their worth, that Black lives matter? What would it look like for English-speaking Americans to lower the volume of their speech so that the melody of immigrant languages could rise and fill the air? Well, we can imagine what home looks like, a home that is home for everyone, not just some. Because the truth is, whatever sense of home we have, it's an illusion if it's not home for all of us. I'll be home for Christmas, just you wait and see. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. Home. A home for everyone. It remained just a dream for these Jewish people living under Roman occupation. But then one day there was this man who broke onto the scene, a man who some thought was utterly crazy. And he began to shout in the wilderness, "Prepare the way of the Lord. Make a pathway. Repent," which means turn around. Those sinking into the oblivion in our society, find your voice, and finding their voice and their value washed away. John says, turn around, rise up, claim your worth, shout until they hear you. And those who are lording it over others, looking down from their penthouse suites of power and wealth, turn around. Come down from your towers. Use the gifts you have been given to lift up those who walk in the valleys of the shadow of death and despair. For Yahweh is coming. God is coming. God won't remain high above in those lofty places, but God will make himself small as a baby, and will enter this world in the low places, in the humble place. Enter this world among animals, the lowest of the low, who we use and abuse for our own ends. And in this small baby's life, and in the way this baby will live and will love, we will see what it looks like for God to create home here on earth. Peace on earth for all creatures, big and small, revered and despised, honored and forgotten. I'll be home for Christmas. Just you wait and see. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. as we prepare and we wait for Christmas, we have the opportunity and we have the responsibility to make home more than just a dream for those around us. Are we willing to bow down where we need to bow down? Are we willing to rise up where we need to rise up? Are we willing to shout into the wilderness of the world, waking people up with our voice and our presence as we call people to turn around and come back to the center and the heart of peace, that level ground where everyone